and today we're doing something completely different. I finally tracked down Barney from the Escape Artist. Hi Barney.
Hi.
Thanks for the invitation to your beautiful home here in Farnham. Right, so today we're going to talk about something quite different. It's a subject most people tend to avoid in a way, but it's something that most people can absolutely relate to. And today's topic is the subject of fear. And I'd like to know from you, actually, Barney, what do you think? What role do you think fear plays in our daily lives?
Mm-hmm. Yep, good question. It plays a big part in our daily lives, I think, and in the context of financial independence, it kind of keeps us trapped. It keeps us in jobs that we don't like often. It keeps us from kind of making changes. It keeps us from sort of changing our spending patterns. And it stops a lot of people from investing effectively. A lot of people are kind of driven by fear and terrified of losing money when investing. And so they kind of just put the money in a bank account and think that's safe. Unfortunately, that's being eaten away by inflation. So for all of those reasons, kind of identifying fear, understanding fear, and finding better ways to tackle it is important.
Okay. And if you think about this more personally, I mean, what in your personal life, where would you say any key defining moments you can think about where fear played quite a big role?
Yeah, so I can kind of trace it back, I think, to when I was a kid. When I was 10 or 11, my parents moved house, and doing the kind of classic British thing, they bought the biggest house that they could possibly afford, borrowing as much money as possible from the bank. And unfortunately, in 1981, shortly after they moved, interest rates went up to 17%. Mm-hmm. And if you've borrowed the biggest possible mortgage you can, that's pretty uncomfortable when interest rates go to 17%. And so my parents were forced to tighten their belts pretty radically. So my dad stopped buying beer, started brewing his own, and they cancelled the newspaper. Our holiday got cancelled, and essentially my parents kind of did whatever they had to do to be able to meet the mortgage payment. And I think I kind of picked up on all of this at the time, and I kind of realised money was a problem. And I think at some level I internalised the idea that if you're in debt, that's a dangerous thing. You're always kind of at the whim of interest rates, or at the whim of the bank. And I think from that point on, I was fearful of poverty. Mm-hmm. I was fearful of being homeless, and that kind of motivated me later in life to get a job, get the best paying job that I could. And get a well-paid job in finance, and rather, as my income went up, instead of allowing my lifestyle to inflate along with it, I was always just focused on stashing as much money away as possible. And for the first few years, the primary driver for that was, firstly, to kind of get on the housing ladder, and then as soon as I was on the housing ladder, I just wanted to pay the mortgage off as quickly as possible. Looking back and kind of psychoanalyzing myself, I think what I was trying to do was avoid, a repeat of what happened to my parents.
Oh, that's interesting.
And have, if you like, the secure base of knowing that you own your own house, and like the bank can't take that away from you. So that was kind of how I got that. That was one of the drivers for how I got on the road to financial independence in the first place.
Right. We're going to cover a bit more about how you actually did it. I think the point you make about that the source of that fear, I think for me, when I think about my journey, mine actually started and traced back probably to the age of 15 when I immigrated to the UK. And the biggest challenge we had then really was a survival one. That idea of trying to buy bread, buy milk, where do you find the money, where do you find the resources? The big limiting kind of belief I had as I've kind of grown from then was, would I ever break out of this poverty? Would I ever kind of take off, either down a career path that completely liberates me and liberates my family from this situation?
Mm.
You know, or will I just carry on with a poor mindset and always think, well, money, well, it's a bit elusive, can't get hold of it, can't control it, can't own it. So that's, you know, I can always, when I think about that and what role that's played, I can definitely say that fear has been quite a massive drive.
Yes, yeah, and I see in the readership of my blog, it kind of resonates with people that had some sort of kind of financial anxiety, some sort of period in their life where they didn't feel that they had enough money. So those people kind of, the blog kind of often resonates with them. And I see, I meet quite a lot of them as well for coaching. And the advantage that people from an immigrant background have, and they have many disadvantages, but the advantage in some way is that early period of kind of worrying whether you're going to fit in a new culture, whether you're going to be able to earn in the new culture, whether you know the family's going to have enough to put, as you say, food on the table. Paradoxically, that is for some people the making of them, because what it does is it removes complacency. And so those people tend to be very hardworking, very careful with their money, kind of conservative with their money. And they don't show off, they don't waste it, and so I see quite a lot of those people on a journey to financial independence, where that experience as an immigrant in some ways has been helpful to them. Now that doesn't mean that it's a comfortable experience for them, quite the opposite, but you know, it does provide a powerful motivator. And that can go on and have these kind of great benefits down the road when your money is then kind of working for you. So if you can kind of get through that period and be motivated to stash your money and get a freedom fund that's earning compound interest and kind of growing for you, then kind of great things are possible. But even if you've reached the point where you've got enough and you don't need to worry about money anymore, you still need to address the fear. Just being rich doesn't take away the fear.
Absolutely.
You have to kind of look in on yourself and say, where are these anxieties coming from? And how can I mitigate them?
Financial independence is a bit of a minefield for many people. In one sense, most people kind of get the idea of it. Could you just explain what your understanding of what financial independence is, and maybe shed some light on what path you took and what possible other options people might have at their disposal?
So financial independence is, for me, just about freedom. It's the concept that you have the choice of whether to work or not, and if so, what kind of work you want to do. So in the kind of in the community, people talk about FIRE, FIRE, with the FI standing for financial independence and the RE standing for retire early. Personally, I don't think of it as being about retirement. That has got all sorts of connotations for me. That word of like playing golf and, you know, incontinence bags and things like that. So the way I think about it is financial independence is the freedom to do what you want to do, to pursue things that are meaningful to you. And you can kind of find, you know, what you were put on the earth to do. That's kind of how I think about it. And, you know, there are many different paths to that. So, you know, I write about, you know, on The Escape Artist, I write about the path that I took because it's what I know. It's what I'm most credible talking about. And what I did was get a sort of respectable middle-class job as an accountant, and really focused on, you know, really working hard, getting up the ladder, getting promoted, etc., and just saving as much as possible of the income, and then learning how to invest really, really effectively. So that was the path I took, and that, you know, that path took me 20 years,
Mm-hmm.
There are other ways to do it.
Yeah.
There are other ways to do it. So, other people have a more entrepreneurial journey
Yes.
to financial independence. Some others might work as an interim executive or a contractor or a freelancer.
Yeah.
Other people, and those people get more flexibility, they get more discretion over the hours that they work and the projects on which they work, merely by being a freelancer. And that you can get a lot of freedom without necessarily being fully financially independent. Another path is, in some ways, if you can find your dream job, in some ways the whole need to get to financial independence becomes much less. So, if you're, let's say, a nurse, and you love your work as a nurse, and you always want to work as a nurse, and you want to work until you're 65 plus, well, fine, maybe you don't need to be so focused on, saving and investing. Obviously it would be nice to have a retirement fund, but if you're happy to work till you're 65 and that kind of feeds your soul, then great. And the problem that we have is that that's a minority of people. So most people are doing jobs that, let's face it, they wouldn't do if it wasn't for the money.
Correct.
And so the danger, if you like, of going down that road is that you're doing it for the money, you're kind of doing the best paying job that you can tolerate. And so if that's the case, I think financial independence is a way of, over time, escaping from that and getting more freedom and more options, either to do less work or to do different work.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I really think the word options that you use there, for me, is a really key one, because a lot of the time people, quite a number of people enjoy the idea of working. I personally see working as a kind of, weirdly, a calling in a way, because you do have to work and exercise your skill set, but you have the choice. I think financial independence gives you that choice about what you do with your time. And the option to actually say, well, actually, I don't want to do that job, or I want to do it, but I want to do it 3 times a week, or once a week, or whatever.
3 days
whatever,
a week.
Whatever. 3 days a week, whatever it might be. And I think that option is really powerful, because a lot of people in the workplace are held prisoner, in a way, by their jobs and the need to fund their mortgages and the need to kind of keep funding a lifestyle that they don't necessarily need to be living. So I think having that option is extremely powerful, because you can make decisions a bit better, I think.
Yeah, so that just ties back to that idea that debt ensnares you. Debt is a trap. If you are in debt, you have to keep making those payments to the bank, or they can take your house away if you're a homeowner. So I absolutely, that's what, I write about the prison camp, this idea of being stuck in a place where you're forced to work, not for the love of it, but because you're trapped, and debt I see as kind of one of the primary drivers for that. Debt, or just an extravagant lifestyle that you're forced to support and pay the price for in your work.
Is there an age at which it becomes too late to pursue financial independence?
So this kind of ties to the question of, who is financial independence possible for? Who is it realistic for? Am I too old? Etc., etc. And I kind of, again, I meet people, and very often they say, "Oh, I wish I'd found your blog, when I was 21 or 18, or why don't they teach this stuff at school?" And it is absolutely right that the sooner you can get your act together, the sooner you can learn about money, the sooner you can learn about the power of compound interest and how powerful that is, you're just making it so much easier for yourself by coming to it early. But the truth is, I tell this to people all the time, we are where we are.
Yeah.
The best time to start investing was 20 years ago, 30 years ago. The second best time is now. So it's a truism, but it's never too late to improve the way that you're kind of managing your money, running your money, thinking about money. Everyone can do better at that.
Yes.
Who amongst us is perfect? Who amongst us is earning as much as they possibly can, spending as optimally as they possibly can, and investing as optimally as they can? Answer kind of no one.
Yeah.
Or very few people. So what I do believe is that everyone can learn to get better with money, and financial independence, you can think of it as a set of tools and techniques just to get better with money.
Yeah. And what role do you think culture plays in all this? Because in America, this is a much bigger movement almost. A lot more people buy into it. It just seems a lot more realistic in some way, like America or in Canada. But here in the UK or in Europe even, the culture is slightly different, I feel. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, culture is huge. Culture is really, really important. It makes a big difference because, humans are social creatures. It's so natural to kind of observe what other people around us are doing, and consciously or even more so unconsciously follow, copy, mimic what everyone else is doing. And before you know it, the neighbours have bought a new car, you've bought a new car, and you're kind of stuck on that treadmill.
Yeah.
So culture is huge. In the US, really the financial independence movement started in the US, and you can think of it as a tradition that goes back a long way in American culture.
Yeah.
So you can trace it back, to the 70s, and the book Your Money or Your Life. You can trace it back further than that. You can trace it back 100 years to Thoreau, who went off to live in a cabin in the woods and wrote about it in Walden.
Yeah.
That idea of escaping the crowd, getting away from it all, downshifting, living simply, kind of rejecting consumerism. That goes back a long way in American culture, and you can kind of tie it to that tradition of individual freedom and going back to the frontier settlers, hundreds of years ago. So in the UK, this is, the financial independence movement, such as it is still really kind of below the radar. Yeah. It's much smaller than in the US. And I think, Brits in particular find it hard to talk about money. It's just, it's kind of just not the done thing. And so, and financial independence is absolutely about shining a light on, your money habits, the way you think about it.
Yeah.
And then kind of making rational, conscious choices to give yourself the best shot of financial independence and hence freedom. So the way I think about money is money reflects power, power that can be used in a good way. So not power to boss other people around or dominate other people, but the power to do what you want to do, kind of do what you think's right, do what you think's meaningful, and help other people as well. So money, in that sense, money is power, and money gives you choices. And I definitely think that the American willingness to talk about that, which you can just see in their you can see in the discourse, you can see it in the size of the movement, you can see it in the blogs.
Yes.
The readership of blogs like Mr. Money Moustache and Early Retirement Extreme is just a multiple of anything here in the UK.
Yeah. Okay. Relationships play a huge role in our lives, and I'd be interested to hear your view on what role being married and possibly even having kids on this journey actually had on the possible success of you becoming financially independent. Do you mind just shedding some light on what that was like.
Sure, but if I will answer that. But if you're talking about relationships,
Yeah.
One of the biggest determinants of how you think about money, how you think about earning, how you think about jobs, how you think about saving, spending, and investing. Actually, one of the biggest determinants are your parents.
Oh.
So, there's this idea that we all have a money blueprint. So, the idea that we, as children, absorb the examples, the thought processes, the beliefs
Yes.
of the people around us. Children
Absolutely.
children learn by mimicking, by role modelling, that
Yep.
they absorb what's around them, sometimes consciously, but more often unconsciously.
Yeah.
And so, if your parents, for example, were always very careful with their money, you yourself are much more likely just to be the same and careful with your money. Not always. Some people rebel against their parents consciously, and they say, "Well, no, I don't want to be like mum and dad.
Yeah.
I'm going to, buy some champagne and throw a party."
Yeah.
But that's the that conscious rebellion is the minority.
Yeah.
Much more common is that we kind of mimic the examples of our parents. And so, again, if I look at my own kind of journey to financial independence, it wasn't based around kind of starting a business and being entrepreneurial. My parents were very much people, kind of middle-class people that just got a safe, steady job and stuck with it, and then were careful with their money. So that was the role model I had. That was the example I had, and that's what I replicated in my own life. So that those, it can be really instructive just to go back and look at, how were my parents with money? What ideas have I got from them? Because that will play a big part in how you see money and what might be holding you back at the moment. And then, so it's well worth doing that. Then to your question about, what's the impact of relationships, for example, with your spouse or children. So taking those in turn, it's very common for couples to fight about money. It's the most. It is the most
number
common
one
source of rows, apparently for the population as a whole. And part of the reason for that is that that money blueprint point that I was just talking about. So if one partner grew up with parents that were very frugal, and another partner grew up with parents that were very spendy, you've potentially got a mismatch there in the relationship. And what each one assumes is normal is not the other person's normality.
Correct.
And so talking about money with your other half is a really, 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 really important part of getting aligned and then getting pointing in the same direction as regards financial independence. Because if one of you is really keen on financial independence and the other one isn't, it's probably not going to happen. It's a conflict, and it's going to take up a lot of emotional energy. And you're just making it so much harder. So the idea of getting aligned with your partner is really, really powerful. Bringing conscious awareness, having conversations about it, not just kind of assuming anything. And so there's some really good resources for that. So again, if you look at the Mr. Money Moustache website, there's an article on there called "Having the Talk with a Current or Potential Mate." There's an article on my website called "Discussing the Escape Plan with a Significant Other." There's another one that's called "Why Cutting Spending Won't Harm Your Love Life." all of those articles essentially revolve around the idea of just being open and honest and talking about what's important and why, and reaching kind of a better understanding of the other person's point of view. Certainly, on my journey, my wife often asks me the question, what's the purpose of all this saving? Why are we saving? Why don't we just enjoy ourselves now? What's the point of being the richest man in the graveyard, etc.? Whereas my attitude was much more around, the more of a stash of freedom fund that we have, the more options that I have, the more resilient we are to me losing my job, the more runway that I have to retrain or start a new job or start a new career or start a business. So to me, saving represented freedom plus safety.
Correct. It's interesting hearing the references you made to those particular resources. I remember there's a post I did called "The Secret Source of Guaranteed Rich Life," and in that post I was referring to the choice of a life partner as playing a massive role in what your financial life actually turns out to be like years down the line. I've certainly noticed in my life that meeting my wife, who is actually extremely frugal, changed my life. When I met her, I had absolutely no savings whatsoever.
Right.
She had a ton more savings.
Okay, great.
And she was thinking about buying her own property and that type of thing. And I noticed that going on that path with her, though we've only been married for about 7 years now, has personally, from my personal perspective, really transformed kind of my view on money as well. So the choice of the right partner really, really does make a huge impact, I think, on that journey. Just thinking about, there'll be a ton of people out there, Barney, who are listening to all this and probably say to themselves, this all sounds really great. I think I'm on board in a way. I get the idea of financial independence. How do I actually get started? What do I do right now to begin this path? What would you say to those people?
Yeah, it's interesting. So people have this idea. We have the examples of, if you like, celebrities or lottery winners, people that have got this huge pot of money and in theory should never need to work again. So I think it's easy for people to sort of visualize those weird kind of freaky exceptions. What people just don't realize is that it is possible for kind of people like you or me, with the right techniques, with the right tools, with the right mindset. And one of the things that made it harder back in the day, for me, trying to explain this to my wife was like, there were no resources, there was no framework, there was no kind of operating system where you could say, look, you do all these things, you get your savings rate up to
the definition.
The definition of financial independence is, let's say, having 25 times your annual spending, and all you need to do is save 50% for 19 years and invest your money wisely, and you'll be there. That framework is now very easy to access because it's on the internet for free. The best financial advice is on the internet for free. The challenge is not the lack of information. The challenge is all the kind of bad information that's obscuring the good information. And so just knowing that it's possible for people like you or me is a huge advantage. Just having the advantage of people that have discovered this stuff and then documented their journey and put it out there is really, really helpful. And so I would send people to a blog like Mr. Money Moustache, who got to financial independence, at the age of 31. And, he did that. Yes, it was a higher than average salary, but it wasn't, it wasn't kind of Premier League footballer stuff. I think his peak earnings were something like 60 or 70,000 sterling equivalent. And so those examples are out there, and they have laid out in amazing detail every step of how you reduce your spending,
Yes.
how you maximize your chance of earning, how you invest the difference as simply and as safely and as kind of conservatively and without getting ripped off by the financial services industry. So go and look at some of those blogs. You know, the Mr. Money Moustache blog is an excellent starting point.
It's a good resource. Okay, so it'd be really good to explain what life is like at the point at which you've achieved financial independence. What does it mean for you practically? Do you still do the odd jobs here and there? You know, what do you do with your time? Any passion projects, that type of thing?
Yeah, you know, the answer is it's just different for everyone. So financial independence gives you choices. It allows you to kind of redesign your life from scratch. And so for me, I went from doing a pretty full-on full-time job to essentially nothing. And I really appreciated that decompression period of having some time where you just throw away the alarm clock and you just chill out for a few months and just kind of get up and do as much or as little as you want that day. And I gradually kind of rebuilt my life and added new stuff, new projects, new kind of new passions into it. And that process just evolves. It carries on evolving over time. So you know, for example, I got into I joined a running club. I got into long distance cycling. I experimented with some kind of fun but wacky jobs. So I went and worked as a barman. You know, I worked as a barman in Henley in the steward's enclosure because I was just interested in what that would be like.
I heard being a Deliveroo driver is quite a popular one for a few people.
I haven't done that, but I did. I did drive a van for a week for a charity, and just as a kind of, I was asked to do that, so I got some pocket money for that. It's not what I would want to do, you know, for a long-term job, but it's kind of, you know, that's kind of the interesting thing about financial independence. You can just you have the freedom
to pick and choose,
pick and choose and to experiment and kind of find what works for you. Obviously write the blog. I do coaching for people, kind of explaining investing and how to kind of think about financial independence, how to get to financial independence, etc. One-on-one, and so, you know, over time you kind of rebuild a different life, and it's different for everyone.
Excellent. Well, Barney, I think we've covered quite a lot today. Thanks for inviting me to your home. It's been a really good experience. Where can people reach you?
So the blog is the main place. So it's theescapeartist.me, not .co.uk, not .com. And you can kind of find the Facebook and the Twitter accounts there, and my email address is there if you want to get in touch with me. But the blog's the main place.
Excellent. Guys, thank you very much.